I thought I'd just drop.
Soccer, football is always looking for talent. That's obvious. The talent on the field. And a lot of the time, maybe we should be looking at the talent off the field as well. The rising ranks of up-and-coming coaches with that desire to educate and learn themselves. On Sporting Day, we have, all the way from England, Shauna Duffy. Shauna, welcome to Sporting Denver.
You're all right, thank you for having me.
What's it like back in my home country?
No, it's all right, I like it.
Well, it's beautiful here. We've got blue sky and sunshine, but it does threaten in Denver, Colorado, to be a little bit like Stockport or this afternoon on a rainy afternoon. So I'll let you know later. Thanks for joining us. What first started you on your desire to coach?
At first, obviously, when I was younger, it was all about the playing. I never really thought I'd become a coach. I never considered it. It was nothing that I thought females were doing. So it was really when I took a serious knee injury doing my ACL that I was in a point where I didn't really know whether I could get back playing again or what do you do when you're injured. And obviously, I was lucky that when I was at Blackburn Rovers in their Centre of Excellence, there was a good support system around me. And because I'd been there for about 4 or 5 years, they weren't willing to just let me not turn up anymore as such. I've only come in for rehab, and they kind of pitched the idea that I should get into coaching. And I sat there with my dad, and I was just confused, and I didn't think it was something that could possibly happen because I was only 16. Right. Yeah, so then they got me involved with the under-9s volunteering. I was watching loads of the coaches that worked within the girls' academy. And I was just blown away. I just fell in love straight away. And I knew that if I could help out in some little way with the younger kids, obviously, hopefully when they grow up and they grow older, they know that there could be a career either playing or coaching. So it was more giving back to Blackburn as well. I felt that pride that I wanted to give something back to them because they'd given so much time to me as well.
Of course, yeah. Your playing career, when did you start playing to your unfortunate end at 16 with your injury?
Yeah, so as far as I can remember, I've always had a football at my feet. I've got an older brother. He used to play. I wouldn't say he was the greatest, not that he'd ever let me say that, but no, I always used to go and watch him, used to go with my dad and stuff like that. And I think it was 6 years old when I first joined my first girls team. That was Wigan Athletic as well. And I think I first went down and it was an under-10 session and I was only 6 and he was like, oh, we really want to sign her. But I was too young. Wow. Yeah, I was too young. So they said, come back a couple of years later. I used to go to like local futsal sessions, just anything to kick a ball around. And then obviously when I was old enough, I went to Wigan, had a season there, moved to another local team just for a different challenge, something that wasn't as far to travel. And then one day I remember my dad just coming in and saying, we've heard about these trials at Blackburn. And it was just a different world. I'd never heard of girls' academies. All I knew was your local boys team, your local girls teams. So when he came in and kind of said, look, we're thinking of signing you up to these trials, I was nervous. I was scared. I didn't really know what you did at a trial. But no, luckily my family was supportive and I just threw all I could into it and went to the trials at Blackburn, and I actually enjoyed the process. It was just all small-sided games. What more could a young girl want? I was only 12 myself when I went, so just playing loads of games. I just enjoyed it, and then luckily I got into the under-14s as a younger under-14, and then I must have spent 5 seasons then at Blackburn. So I did 2 years at the under-14s, 2 years at the under-17s, and the age groups changed slightly. So then I had an extra season. And then obviously that's when I did my injury when I was 16.
Was that all within the you say Blackburn Rovers, obviously an excellent club up there in Lancashire. I seem to have a bit of a connection with Lancashire, with Keith and David, who we'll touch on later, with the Wigan Association and yourself. Was that all through the Blackburn Rovers Academy system?
Yeah, so the girls kind of run alongside it, but slightly different. So when I first started, it was called a Centre of Excellence.
Right.
Um, Everything was double age band, so you start at under 10s, then under 12s, 14s, 16s, and then you have your first team. So it's kind of like we had our own budgets and stuff like that in terms of the women's team. We wore the same kit, we wore the same training kit and playing kit, but we never trained at the same facilities.
Right.
Every now and again, you got to go over to the boys' academy when it was pre-season, but we were very much in our own category at the same time. So when obviously I turned up, it looked amazing to me, and I wouldn't have
Of course.
known that this wasn't the boys' academy. I just treated it and expected it to be the same as the boys. It was only obviously as I got older that you see the differences, and you realise that even though we're called a girls' academy, there are still some differences between the girls' academy and the boys' academies.
Just staying on that playing side, you said it was almost like a community. Yeah, boys. There's no, this is Blackburn Rovers. You feel part of something. Going into that U17 where you said you had the injury,
Yeah,
and they were good enough to keep you going and encouraging you right up until that point. That association with Blackburn, on the coaching side, on the connection side, administration, right through that academy system, was that all sort of one big connection?
yeah,
That that
definitely.
right, yeah,
It's all that I knew.
yeah,
I'd forgotten about the younger days when I was in grassroots football, and I kind of had that mentality that this is elite football and it's all I was
sure,
interested in. So obviously being 16, doing my injury, I was so devastated and heartbroken. But then within a matter of weeks, I had this new leash of life that I was coaching, and now I was a coach, and it kind of helped me manage my injury. So I'd turn
yeah,
up, I'd coach the under nines, I'd finish a session, they'd go home with their parents, and then I'd put on my training kit, and then I'd be on the pitch doing my rehab with the physio, with the strength and conditioning coach. So I really felt a part of the club, and I still thank them to this day for obviously the opportunity that they gave me, because
of
I really
course,
don't think I would have coached if it wasn't for them, because I don't know where I would have kind
right.
of jumped onto that pathway.
The before the injury, did you have aspirations to go on and play at that extra higher level?
Yeah, definitely. I think back in the day when I was playing, which seems years ago now, um,
Tell me about it. Yeah.
you had to get nominated to go to England trials. So the
Right.
coach could put your name forward, and you'd then turn up to this big England trial day, and there'd be England scouts, England coaches, and stuff like that. And you'd be playing against all the people that you'd probably met. So I remember there was Everton players there were Liverpool players there. So you turn up, you're seeing these familiar faces, but then you're expected just to train alongside them for the sake of this England trial. So I got
Right.
nominated a couple of times to go to days like that. And straight away, you felt proud that you turned up. There's all these England coaches and they're all looking at you. And
Of
I
course.
was lucky enough to kind of get a little breakthrough where I was asked to attend like a regional camp, which it was called at the
Sure.
time. And then as soon as I got that phone call, the week after was when I snapped my ACL. So I never actually attended.
At that point, you said that the club, fantastic, Blackburn Rovers coming in there, not just saying thanks very much, cheerio. What were your thoughts that time when you realised there is still going to be some involvement in the game through a coaching career? Just talk us through that little process, those initial days of that, weeks of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think as soon as I'd done the injury, obviously it was on a training night. It was crazy. I remember my dad was stood there watching. I just jumped up to receive a ball, landed, and it had snapped straight away. And I remember just looking through the little fences and thinking, I've done something bad here. And then all
Yeah,
the coaches came running over, and I kind of just got whisked off to hospital. And literally 2 days after, I was back up at Blackburn, with the physio, with the coaches, and obviously my dad, because he was the one, he was my taxi and drove me
of
everywhere and
course. Yeah,
supported me in that sense. And we all sat there and just had a discussion of what do we do now. And I think the first few weeks were obviously when you do your ACL, it's a shock to the system because it's such a big injury. And if
of
anything, they were
course.
educating me because I was only young, being 16. I didn't know what an ACL was. I didn't know how long the recovery was. Then it was, oh, you're going to need operations, and it was just a whirlwind of information that I probably couldn't digest. And then a couple of weeks after, I kept turning up to training for physio, and I was just disheartened. You couldn't go on the pitch. I was just locked away in a room. And then that's when, thankfully, the technical director got in touch with me and my dad, kind of gave us a bit of a meeting and just said, look, you've been the captain for the last 2 years. What's your thoughts on this? And like I said earlier, I was just shocked. I didn't see myself as a coach. I'd always kind of had that captaincy role or leadership figure role, but I didn't see myself standing there in front of a group of players and coaching and delivering. Went away and thought about it with my dad, and when they tied it in terms of rather than extra driving, I just turn up an hour earlier, join in with this session, deliver a bit of coaching, and then it didn't really put too much strain on my family in terms of getting me up to Blackburn, because obviously it's a 45-minute drive, but sure. It made it an easier choice for myself because they put it right in front of what would have been my usual session. And luckily I turned up that very first week when they said that I was going to be involved, and all the little under nines were just happy to have one of the under 16s there, because it's usually they walk in, go home, and then we come onto the pitch, so they never really got to see us. Right. So no, it was massive, and I can obviously hold my hats off to my dad in terms of bringing me, and obviously my parents had a massive part in that because I weren't interested. I was just focused on my knee. I thought I was going to be a footballer, and then it was them that said, well, what if you can't play, or what if this? And school were the same, kind of, you should have a plan B. And then that's when I suppose I had to mature a little bit and put my all into the coaching.
Did you have education at the time of your unfortunate injury? Were you looking at that as well as progressing your playing career?
Yeah, so I remember we'd just got our mock results back from, we'd done exams because I was in year 11. Right. So I'd just done mock exams before Christmas, because it was February time, so not long after we'd started back school after Christmas. Got all the results back and I'd done really well. And the teachers just kept saying it's good that you've done really well on your mocks. You never know when you might need them. And the stigma of children just kind of go, no, you're never going to need them mocks. And the weeks after, when I'd done my injury, I had a meeting with school and they said, you're going to be needing that PE mock exam. So luckily I got an A star. So that gave me an A star straight away. I didn't need to worry about doing it. Yeah. I did drama at the time, and that got me another high grade. And I was lucky that I'd knuckled down at school and I did well in my mocks, or else if I would have had the same mentality as other people who maybe didn't try in the mock exams or didn't revise, then I would have been in a very different situation than I was.
And I think you're giving that advice right now as we go live to hey, you want to play, things may happen, don't forget your education. So automatically your playing career has come to a halt.
Yeah.
You are now out there on the field with a group of U9s, which is can be herding cats on occasions. You are now an automatic role model. You train a thought on that education to go and get some coaching education. How did that evolve? What was the first stages, Shauna?
Yeah, so I think I'd done around a month where I was just doing one session a week, watching the other coaches. I was a bit timid to kind of join in because I was still on crutches and I just wanted to kick the ball, but obviously I couldn't. So I spent I spent a lot of time watching, and I always remember the technical director saying, just watch what people say and make note of what people say. And being 16, I was like, I don't know what he's going on about, but I made a point of doing it because he told me to. And then I look back now and I've still got the same notepad where all my little notes saying receive on your back foot and little things like that when you're getting coached, you don't even think about because you do it naturally. Where for a coach, you have to feed them that information. So I made a strong point of writing all these notes down and coaching points that different coaches I was watching were saying. And then luckily, when I started to progress and enjoy it more, the technical director said, what are your thoughts on actually coaching? And that's when I had a more honest conversation, said, I'm really enjoying it. I think it's something that I might be good at. And then luckily they managed to fund my level 1 and my level 2. So I didn't have to pay for that. All I had to do was attend and obviously use the players that I was working with as participants for coaching and stuff and to practice. And that's where I go back to right at the very beginning. I can never thank Blackburn enough for what they did in terms of not only supporting me when I was probably at my lowest as a player, but actually stepping me on that coaching pathway and that coaching ladder, but actually funding it as well, because Blackburn, like, their funds might not be as large as other clubs, but they were willing to do that in terms of coaching CPD. They put me on the courses, they put me in line with the people that I needed to develop. And I kind of fast tracked through the level 1 and 2. And then once I'd done that, I then realised I wanted to then spend a couple of years actually coaching heavily on my own or with an assistant and really practicing what I'd learned on those coaching courses.
It's been a long time since I've done coaching anyway. Can you refresh me, and certainly our viewers and supporters, what's that, just in brief, to go into further detail, what's that level 1 and 2 look like for everybody out there?
Yeah, so it's all changed now, but the level 1 when I did it was more kind of an introduction into football coaching, kind of what a safe practice would look like, kind of like your beginner ideas of dribbling, basic topics, passing, receiving. So then whoever did that level 1 course could at least go and put on a basic session for whoever their participants were. So I kind of felt ready for my level 2 immediately once I'd finished that, because I was already doing that without the qualification. So then I went on my level 2 straight away, and that's where I was a bit more taken back by the detail that you had to know to obviously be able to coach these elite players that I was working with and talking through like different phases of the game and stuff like that. And when I was on that level 2, that's where I probably thought, you know what, I want a career in this. Like, I'm serious about my coaching, and the finer details of trying to develop the players was really what I was interested in. And that's where I kind of forgot that I was playing or supposed to be recovering, because I just put all my eggs in one basket in terms of coaching and trying to better myself that way, that I forgot that I was trying to get back playing again. So yeah, the level 1 and 2 were fundamental, and without them I wouldn't be where I am now. And obviously I'm glad that I did them when I did with the younger age groups, to really practice and not be scared of getting anything wrong, because they don't know any different. They were only under 9s. So I got away with it for the first few months, I think.
Right. And this was also in the academy system with Blackburn, is that correct?
Yeah.
So your progression then through level 1, level 2, a bit of fast track going there, you're comfortable, you're involved in the game, you're loving it, right? Talk us through where you're at now and what process that was.
Yeah, so I'd spent, I think it was 4 seasons in total, from the under 9s through to the under 11s, taking different positions, from voluntary ones, assistant roles, head coach roles. And then one of the coaches at the time, Scott Rogers, moved over to Liverpool to work with their academy teams and their first team. And there was a gap in their system that they wanted an under 13s coach. So he contacted me, and he'd worked quite closely with me at Blackburn and asked if I was interested. And I weren't sure at first, because all I knew was Blackburn. And then I suppose he gave me a bit of a chat, said he wanted to support me and mentor me in terms of progressing to the next stage and moving up an age group that I wasn't getting the exposure to at Blackburn. So that's when I moved over to Liverpool, and was a part of their girls academy with the under 13s. So again, that was a bigger challenge in terms of we were now playing 9v9, not 7v7. It was an extra training night. There was a bit more pressure put on us as coaches to produce plays for the first team and stuff like that. And obviously the credentials that Liverpool have, they were a big club to work for. And I think I needed that challenge to step out of my comfort zone of being at Blackburn and knowing all the players, knowing all the coaches, to really see if I was a good coach and see what I would do, not knowing anyone. So when I took that step, I suppose that was the biggest challenge that I had at that point. Of I had Scott, which was a familiar face, but he was working with the first team. So even though he was there, he wasn't truly there on the pitch next to me, for example, where I was only used to having someone that I was really close to by my side. So that took me massively out of my comfort zone. I spent a year with the under 13s, and then the age groups changed to even numbers. So then, so essentially I was then the under 12s coach. I worked with different coaches, a lot of male coaches, which was excellent for myself, because I needed to see what their thoughts were on the game and their understanding of the game. And a lot of the coaches that I've worked with have always been older than me. So I've always wanted that kind of mentorship relationship where I could learn off them from their experiences.
Of course, yeah.
But obviously, as soon as you get that, they tend to move up to a different age group, and it kind of left me always at the under 12s with different coaches coming in all the time. So I spent, I think it was 4 years in total with Liverpool with the under 12s. I really wanted to just hit home with that age group and see if that was kind of going to be my forte in under 12s, getting them ready to push on. And then that's when I managed to get onto the UEFA B licence. And then that's when I met Keith Mayer in a more formal capacity.
Give the wave. He always looks at you. Yeah, go
hey, Keith.
All right, mate. Yeah. Sorry, Shauna, carry on.
No, so when I got onto my B licence, that's when Keith was then my mentor, and he was kind of opening my eyes to different avenues and different pathways that I could go into in the game, because I felt like I was at a standstill at under 12s, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to move up. I wasn't sure if I wanted to work in 11v11. I wasn't sure if I wanted to work with women in terms of an open age team. And then luckily through that 12 months that I worked with Keith and the other tutors, and obviously everyone else that was on the course, I started to look for different jobs and look at the older age groups and what would I need to do to better myself to make sure I was ready to be an under 14s coach or an open age coach. And luckily that's where I found different breakthroughs with Salford City, and then obviously moving up to the under 14s at Liverpool as well once I completed my B licence.
You don't get qualifications like that without having to work hard for them, and you've gone through the system, and you're now, you're moving on to that open age group, and Salford City gave you that opportunity. You said vulnerable earlier. Give us your take on what that did for you by being put in that vulnerable situation, and did you take that with you when you went into Salford City, the open age group?
Yeah, definitely. Because I was at university at the same time, I was doing the women's team there, but I saw everyone that took part as like my friends, and they were all similar ages to me, so I never really saw it as, I'm working in open age football, because it was a university programme. Even though we wanted to compete and try and win the league and win the cups, it is still quite a casual environment to play in and to work in. So yes, I was working 11v11, and yes, they were all my age, so they are over 18, but I never really saw it as that big team and a big club that I suppose I was wanting to one day work in. So in terms of vulnerabilities, it was more people are going to talk back at me, where at Liverpool you get full respect from the children because the children, and it was, how am I going to manage that? How am I going to manage coaching people years older than me? How am I going to manage working in a system where I was working on my own as the only coach? I didn't have any support. Well, I did in my first season. I had support off one of the men's first team players, which was fantastic in terms of my understanding and developing my game. But that wasn't as consistent as I probably would have wanted or needed in my first break in open age football. So I suppose that's where I found myself vulnerable looking back, that I spent the 2 years at Salford very much on my own in terms of planning, delivering, managing, which I'd never really had to manage. And I think there is quite a big difference between being a coach and being a manager. And I suppose I've only realised that now upon reflection, that I'm no longer at Salford, that there is a big difference. But
Shauna, I don't mean to interrupt. It's a great point. Talk us through that in terms of high-profile coach through the ranks, served your time at apprenticeship, working with Salford City leaders, and having to manage them at the same time. Can you talk us through that process? How you managed to do that?
Yeah, of course. I suppose when I'd been at Liverpool and been at Blackburn, you always work alongside someone. So whether you're the head coach or the assistant, you're very much equal. You both make decisions together. And even if you're having a bad day, you've still got your technical director above you that they can make that final decision. And obviously in the game, it's football, isn't it? You're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days. You can't please everyone. But it was never really you that had to deliver that message. So obviously when I went to Salford, I came in as their coach, and at the time, Danny Livesey, which was a first team Salford City player, he was the manager. Within, I think it was 2 weeks, he went out on loan. So our roles swapped round. So I was then the manager and he was then the coach because he couldn't commit to what he obviously agreed previously. So that was a shock to me because I'd accepted the role as being the coach and it very quickly changed. But it was something that once I'd spoke to Keith, once I'd spoke to Michelle, which was another tutor that I had on my B licence, they just said, you need to do it now or else you don't know when this opportunity is going to come up again. And straight away, that's what I thought, I'm just going to do it and see what happens. And I had support of the sporting director at the time in terms of he wanted us to do well. He wanted us to get out of the league that we were in because the players that we'd recruited were far better than the league we were playing in, if that makes sense.
Yes,
so
of course.
Essentially the challenge was to get out of that league and get promoted. And you should be doing that year on year on year. And in the first year, we went unbeaten in the league. So we got that promotion straight away. We took part in 2 League Cups and we won both of them. So we'd done the treble. And then there was the County Cup, which when we went into the final, obviously we were massive underdogs against FC United. And the kind of support and the fan base that we'd built over the last 12 months, being the first ever Salford City Lionesses team, when we turned up that day, and it doesn't sound many, but there was a couple of hundred people watching. It was amazing. And I would never have pitched it at 16 that I'd be stood there in a dugout trying to manage this women's team coming up against a team that had been established for a good number of years. And I think obviously when we lost the game, but we lost it with pride and we lost it with passion. And I don't really think anyone really remembers that as such because we just won the treble the week before. So we were all on a high anyway. And if we would have won that, it'd have been astonishing. But FC United definitely deserved to win that game. And they were a good 3-4 years ahead of us at the time.
Sure. Just tell me again, how old were you in the dugout at that stage?
So when I started at Salford, I was 22, so I'm 24 now.
Okay, so you've risen through the ranks. You're now in the semi-professional with the adult. You've had support from all the clubs you've won, and that is commendable. Blackburn, Salford City, obviously. Where are you at now in terms of the adult side of it? I do know you've moved on. If you can share that with us.
Yeah, so it was recently announced this week. So I've gone over to Stockport County with their women's first team. I spoke to Ronnie, who's their manager, since we've been on lockdown, really, and then kind of pitched to him the idea that I wanted to get my hands dirty with coaching again, because I spent a lot of time at Salford. Like I said, there is a difference between managing and coaching. I felt I was more the manager, and even though I was doing all the coaching and all the delivery, I was spending a lot of time managing the players, managing a program that obviously I'd created and set up with the help of other people externally. Sure. But I felt like I'd lost my way in terms of actually putting on a session for an open age team, in terms of maximising those 2 hours that you've got and really putting what you can onto the grass. So when I was lucky to get on my UEFA A licence, I needed that fresh challenge that all I wanted to focus on was the delivery, not so much managing. So when I spoke to Stockport and they had a manager in place, and I spoke to him and we had the same beliefs, the same passion for women's football and really wanting to push on in that league, it was a no-brainer and it was something I was so excited to be given the opportunity to do. So I've just gone in there as their first team head coach, and obviously we're on lockdown, so I've not managed to meet the players yet, but from what I've spoke to the staff and stuff like that, and obviously Ronnie being the manager, I'm so excited to get the ball rolling and I can't wait to get that first session in with them.
In that role, Shauna, as the first team coach, do you have any responsibilities going down the levels in there with junior ranks as well?
Yeah, so the at Stockport, they have an under-18s team, a development team, and then the first team. So all 3 teams work quite closely together in terms of staff. So like moving forward, from what I've spoke to Ronnie about, I'll do quite a lot of the delivery for the first team, but I'm also keen to help out with the development team, the 18s, however we can. So essentially all the players that are in that open age category should be getting the same type of delivery, same type of topic that you want to deliver. And hopefully it helps with the progression for the players when they move through the ranks. If it means an under-18s ready for the first team, they should find that transition not easy, but they should find it a lot smoother than if we were three separate teams that never spoke, weren't really associated. So I think that was also quite a big pulling point for myself moving to Stockport, that it seemed like a really tight-knit community, and the coaches really got on well. All the players like transitioned through the age groups well, and it especially with the league that they're playing in, being two leagues higher than what I was previously doing at Salford, it was just a challenge that I think I was ready to take on, and something that I'm definitely looking forward to.
The game of football it will always go round in circles. So what you've learnt from your playing career, coming through Blackburn, etc., to the unfortunate injury, with the advice that people have given you, and then transition into coaching, do you find yourself doing the same thing now as what happened a few years ago?
Yeah, definitely. I remember, I think it was about 3 seasons ago now, when I was at Liverpool and I had the under-12s. One of the under-16s snapped their ACL at under-16s. And straight away I got the phone call, do you fancy having a chat with this player? And because I was so focused on the under-12s, I weren't aware that they were one of the under-16s. And I was like, yeah, of course. So we met up in the physio room with the physio, with the parents. And obviously straight away I knew that she'd obviously done the ACL injury, and it was more just a conversation around how are you feeling, like what are your thoughts at this moment in time, and allowing that player to relate to someone that had done what they were currently experiencing. And I think it was a good idea of the physio to come up with that idea, because he hadn't experienced it. So he always had these players saying, I'm feeling this pain, or I feel really down. But unless you've experienced it, you don't truly know what it feels like. So I suppose that's where I found myself trying to become a bit of a mentor to those people that were obviously seriously injured, and they couldn't see a way out, and they couldn't see them ever playing again. And I made them laugh, essentially, that if I could get back playing, and then they definitely can, because they're a lot more elite than I was back in the day.
That is tremendous advice, and it is that full circle, Your role with Stockport County, what's your ambitions with Stockport County then, in terms of progression? Now you've got a game plan, when you get back on the field, that is.
Yeah. Look, we can't give too much away. It's still pre-season.
Oh, okay, all right.
No, but I think obviously now we're off with the coronavirus and all that, the recruitment that's going on behind the scenes, not only in terms of staff, but in terms of recruiting players, and the conversations that people are having. And hopefully through the trial process and pre-season, we'll find that the squad is a lot stronger than it was last year. And I think Stockport found themselves, I know Ronnie won't mind me saying this, but they found themselves when they got promoted into the league, that they probably hadn't recruited properly for that league. And they lost a good run of games at the very beginning, where they were used to that run of winning games all the time, and they got promotion, they were on a real high. So when they struggled in the first few months, I suppose they had to sit down and really address how they wanted to progress and move forward. So I know through speaking regularly to the staff at the club, they've definitely explained to myself how hard it was, but now they're more prepared than ever to really crack that league. And I think through bringing in different members of staff, through bringing in hopefully new players, when the season does begin, we'll show that we have done our research now, and we are more prepared than we were last year moving forward. And you know what, everyone wants to get promoted, and I think we'll definitely be up there battling.
Well, good luck on that. I'll keep a check on the results when we eventually get back on the field. You can be rest assured. Shauna, you've had support, family, friends, clubs, coaches, players in your journey so far. The Football Association and how they work with their local counties. Can you tell me about just the support that they give you, and in terms of the education and knowledge both on and off the field?
Yeah, like I said, right at the very beginning, I found myself trying to fast track through all these qualifications, because when you work in a girls' academy, you have to be qualified to a certain level to be able to have a job.
Yeah.
So I kind of was under that pressure to fast track through the ranks in terms of qualifications. And then when I spent a bit of time away from doing the actual educational courses, it was more just about the delivery. So a couple of years ago, when I decided to do the B license and luckily got accepted onto it, it came as a bit of a shock because I hadn't done a course in that long. I was at university, but it's completely different to a course you would do with your local county FA, and it was more a case of you get assigned to a tutor. So obviously, luckily for myself, I was signposted to Keith Mayer, and then you work with them very closely, and they come and visit you at your club, rather than, I think 5 years ago, I would have then had to coach all the men that were on my course. Where if I've
Right.
never coached men, why should I be getting assessed coaching men? So
Right.
when the FA changed that rule in terms of assessment, they then had the idea that the tutors and the mentors would come out to your club and your place of work. And I think since they've done that, I've been more in my element in terms of whenever I get visited, I'm in my comfort zone in terms of working with the girls, within the academies, because I'd never been exposed to coaching men. I'm not saying it's
Sure.
something that I would never do, but when I was only 18, 19, doing those courses, being the youngest one, the only female, it was very daunting. So when Keith used to come into Liverpool, he was working at Liverpool at the same time with the boys' academy, and
Right.
we'd spend hours chatting about the differences, and we both had a similar age group. He had the under 11s, I had the under 12s. So it was an amazing journey with him to be able to share both of our experiences, but also for him to see what the girls' academy is like compared to the one that he was working in at Liverpool with the boys. So yeah, I did my courses through Lancashire FA.
Yeah.
And the setup there is brilliant. It's really set up quite informally in terms of your classroom's pretty open. You don't walk in and feel, oh, I'm back at school as such. It's just more of like a bit of a gathering, and you just spend your days chatting about football. And what more could anyone want than to get onto this course, chat about football all the time, go out, have a bit of like delivery coaching, work with different people you'd never be exposed to. And I think that's what I've took most of being on these courses, that I was used to working with females, or I was used to working with the same people all the time within Liverpool or Blackburn. So when I
Right.
went on these courses, I was meeting young men from boys' academies. I was meeting people working in open age men's team, open age women's teams. So it was really, I suppose, networking in terms of seeing what their backgrounds are compared to mine, and trying to learn off them as much as you can whilst you're on the course, because when that block finishes or you finish your course, it's up to you to keep in touch with them, or you don't know when your path might cross again with that person. So
Correct.
you tend to build real good friendships from them.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I've definitely learned over time, and through speaking to different people that I suppose I probably see as mentors now to myself, that their advice tends to be, when you get ready for your A license, Shauna, get used to mixing with different people rather than gathering with all the girls or sitting on tables where you already know everyone. Like, really push yourself out your comfort zone and go and sit with someone you don't know, or go and sit with someone in the boys' game, because you don't know where that could lead.
It sounds like you're super excited about that, just being sort of put on the spot in the education environment, which the F a fantastic job. What's your A license looking like right now, Shauna?
Oh, it's not really looking like anything, to be honest.
It's me, right?
I was supposed to start in April. Um, we're in lockdown, so it never
Of
started.
course. Right.
We're just waiting for an announcement in terms of what it could look like, whether it's going to be virtually, whether it's going to be through Zoom calls, or whether we're actually going to be able to go to St George's Park, which is where the course is held.
Yeah.
So I think from next week I should have already finished 2 blocks of my A license, where obviously, unfortunately, I've not been able to start yet. But it just gives me more time to learn and more time to connect with different people during this time. And I think I've tried to maximise the lockdown situation in terms of already connecting with people that are on the course, or already
Sure.
connecting with Kelsey, who's going to be my tutor when I do start the course, and kind of building that relationship now. So when I am eventually allowed to go on it, I'm hopefully more than ready.
as you get higher in your qualifications, B, and obviously now you're in your A.
Yeah.
Has there been any? You mentioned people on the course and mixing and matching, male, female. Has there been anybody on the course that I should know about in terms of that's a big name? Come on,
Oof.
reveal it. Anybody big or anything like that? Because it happens from time to time.
Um,
And through
on,
their education.
on my B license, I think everyone was kind of similar age to myself. We were quite a young cohort in terms of the people that
Okay.
I was surrounded with. So, in terms of a big name, there probably wasn't, but I was more kind of excited to work with Keith. Like, to me, that was a big deal.
Right.
I'd grown up competing against his daughter Catherine in every sport that you can think of. So when I walked in that day and saw Keith, I walked straight out and rang my dad, and I was like,
Excuse me.
"Dad, Keith Mayer's here," and
Right,
it,
that's it. No, that's it. That's enough for Keith. All right,
oh, come
with
on.
Keith. No, go on, go on.
Um,
Sorry, Keith. Sorry, Keith. Go on, mate.
so yeah, I was on the phone to my dad and I was like, "Keith's here," and we were both gobsmacked because even though I knew he worked in football, it was one of them that because I wasn't competing in sport against his daughter, obviously we'd both left high school, gone our separate ways, that you forget about each other. So immediately we both kind of clocked eyes, introduced
Yeah,
ourselves, and we just burst out laughing because it was like, why are we introducing ourselves when we've known each other for years? So I suppose I was lucky in that sense that my tutor was someone that I knew, and I was able to build that strong relationship straight away. And I always thank Keith for how honest he was with me during my B license. I was the only female on my course, and I
right.
used to go a little bit quiet and kind of sit in the background and let all the men do the talking. And I remember he put me on the spot one day and made me stand up and answer these questions. And I think him kind of making me do that really boosted my confidence and made me realise that I probably do know the answers and I should push myself out my comfort zone a little bit more. So that B license was a massive learning curve for myself in terms of more what I'm about and how I can progress as a coach moving forward. And luckily, for what he gave me during that course, it's led me to go on to the A license as well, which I'm obviously buzzing to start, and I can't wait to hopefully complete in the next season.
I'm going to mention Keith one more time, then that is off the radar. When I spoke to Keith briefly about yourself, I says, what am I getting myself into, Keith, to start with? And he went down the road of your transition in coaching. And the question I asked him, I says, where do you think she'll end up coaching? And he said, I don't know, top level, male or female, because they listen. So that's the last bit of praise I'm going to give you, Keith, on that one. Okay. Where do you want to go with it? Because Keith did say top level. Where do you want to take it?
I suppose for myself, I've never really known because it wasn't something that I chose to do. I kind of, through my injury, I kind of just fell onto this pathway. So even now that I'm getting ready to do my A license, it was only last night I was having a conversation with one of my good friends, Zoe, who's worked in the WSL, and I was sitting there like, do I want to do this? Is this what I want to do? And I suppose speaking to people that have worked at that top level and getting advice from them and seeing their coaching pathway and their journey and what they're doing now. Like, she's a general manager now, so it's kind of what
Fabulous.
different routes are there in the women's game. And I'm open to anything. I just want to. The dream is obviously to work full time in football, and those
Right.
opportunities only come every now and again in the women's game because there's only so many top level teams, and the people in those jobs now are obviously doing amazing at what they do. And I think until this next generation of coaches come through, which I probably class myself as these younger coaches coming through, hopefully I'll land myself in a club where I'm comfortable, where I get challenged, where I get pushed to kind of my maximum. So then I learn in different ways, where I think I've been lucky to spend so many years at Liverpool, but I weren't feeling that challenge anymore that I probably needed. It was more just a comfort blanket that I've been here for 6 years now, and
Right.
I love it, and I love all the players, I love the staff, but it's jumping out your comfort zone, isn't it? And that's where I've thrown myself into open age football again, probably coaching and hopefully managing players that are always going to be older than me. And until I get a little bit older, I'm still always going to find that challenge that you're managing, you're coaching people that might be more experienced than myself. But it's obviously that belief in that educational background that hopefully what I can deliver on the pitch is going to help them, even if it's only 1%. But if I can stay in the women's game for as long as I can, that's the aim. I think boys' academies is definitely an appeal, but I know how hard it is to kind of get across it to boys' academies. But that's where I'd probably look to hopefully network and connect on my A licence and see what different opportunities could come up from hopefully completing the A licence in a year or so's time. I'm hoping that opens many more doors for myself.
Well, it's. I'll probably get myself in trouble here. It's time. It's time everybody opened their eyes up a little bit. And, the game doesn't change. The delivery may do on occasion, so it doesn't matter whether you're male or female working with boys or girls. I think it's time for the planet to get on the same page. I'm going to stop there right now on this one. Who I'm in trouble, I think. Who influenced you throughout your playing and your coaching career? Who's your big gun that's led you to where you are now, behind the scenes?
I think in terms of playing, every girl that I know always watched Kelly Smith. That was the biggest name out there in terms of obviously being an English player that I want to be like her, I want to achieve what she's doing. And everyone had that little dream of, can we go and get the scholarship in America? And I think by the time I got to that age, obviously I'd done my injury, but then the WSL was starting to form and get big over in England. So I got given an opportunity to go on a scholarship to America, but I was enjoying my coaching too much that I didn't want to lose that. And I kind of lost that passion for playing and really wanted to go as far as I could in the coaching. So in terms of playing, it was always Kelly Smith. I've got to throw it out there. I'm a Wigan fan. Someone's got to be a Wigan fan, you know what I mean? I always loved Nathan Ellington. My dad's probably watching this laughing now. I always had him on the back of my shirt. But that's just supporting your local team and watching them. And they're probably names that you've never even heard of, but they were always my favourites. But I suppose when it comes to coaching, I never really looked at what the people in the WSL were doing. It was more people that was surrounded by. So at Blackburn at the time, I had Zoe Johnson was there, Scott Rogers were there, and they're still two people now. Obviously, I'm grateful to Scott. He helped me transition over to Liverpool. Zoe's worked in the WSL. She started at the bottom with her team and brought them through the ranks for 5 years and won everything with them. And you look at people like that and they're instantly going to aspire because she's still young herself. Do you know what I mean? But what she did to get a team through the ranks and then make it to that WSL was amazing. And I think that's where I get excited thinking about Stockport now, that it's such a hard challenge to get promoted essentially, but to crack that WSL, which is now the Championship and obviously the Super League, you need support financially, you need backing from the club. So it's not just the kind of coaching on the pitch, it's a lot more around it. And I think when you look at other people like Zoe that's done it, and AJ from Blackburn, she helped their first team, and you watch those females doing it, you instantly feel inspired that, look, that even though there's only a handful of top end women in the game, you have to look at their background and how they've got there. And I'm lucky that I do know quite a few people that I can regularly talk to if I needed to. And even though they might have taken different pathways, AJ now works with the FA, Zoe's a general manager, it still gives you that look in the game that you can still work full time, even if it's not in the dugout on the side of the pitch. There's different avenues that you can take.
You love it, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
You love it. I can feel it here, and I'm 5,000 miles away. So, you've talked about role models, etc. I'm going to throw it out at you right now. You have automatically again become a role model for the drive of the younger generation of coaches in the United Kingdom, certainly England FA, and I know they're supporting the drive for the game for everyone. And you, I've just categorised you now. You're a role model for that because you love it. That's what Kevin Keegan said once. You'll love it. So I'm going to say thank you. There's a hat trick of thank yous. I've got to stop saying that. You're a superstar in the making, if not a star already, Shauna. And I'm not going to mention Keith again. But I do have 5 questions I'm going to throw at you, the quick fire 5. You've
Go on.
given us a couple of, yeah, nothing to do with the Wigan Pies. You're okay with that? Okay, all right. So it's got to be male and female. Your teams, what teams do you support?
Wigan Athletic.
Yeah, female, both, right? Yeah.
No, I only support the men's game. It's hard to support. I support everyone in the women's game because as soon as you're managing one of the clubs, you get that passion for them. So, Liverpool then.
I mean, you don't have to. No, I mean, like, if you just support, like, women's football, that's a great answer. I've never had that, and I apologise for doing that. So, Wigan on the men's team, just the whole game for women, right?
Yeah.
That gets my vote. I'm going to steal that answer next time I'm asked. Players, male and female.
What, my favourites?
Yeah, or just something that's inspired you. Don't have to be your favourites. Just something about them.
Nathan Ellington is a very, very ex-Wigan Athletic player.
Yeah.
Always
the Duke.
watched.
Is it? Was he called the Duke?
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, I
you
know.
know it.
I know. I do know a bit about football.
Love
yeah.
that. Yeah, the Duke. He was always my favourite.
Right.
Women's game, like I said before, Kelly Smith growing up. But then you're looking at the younger generation now coming through. I'm lucky that I played alongside Kira Walsh. So seeing her breaking into
Wow.
the women's international team is amazing. Georgia Stanway, seeing those younger players break through, it's amazing to watch. And when I sit here on my sofa watching them, it's crazy what they've managed to achieve. But no, they're definitely 2 names that I think are going to be in and around the women's game for a very long time.
That super zone, yeah. If you could coach a team right now, all due respect to Stockport, no problem. If you could step into a team right now as first team coach, we'll put the management to one side for another discussion. Male or female, doesn't matter. Who would you coach right now? First team head coach, you've got the job. Which one is it?
I think I'd say Man United. I don't support Man United, and anyone that knows me knows I don't support Man United. But to be able to work alongside Casey Stoney for what she's achieved in her playing career,
Yeah.
In her transition to getting the international job, then going to Man United, and what she's done there in such a short space of time would be unbelievable to work alongside. And I think she's right at the very beginning of her managing career, and I suppose to be a part of that newness, if that's even a word, of something that's brand new.
New era.
That's the one.
We'll have that. You did that.
Yeah.
Go on.
So to work in that environment, and obviously they're bringing quite a lot of young players through and stuff like that. I just think it'd be amazing. And she's female, and I'm quite massive on that I really look up to those females that have spent the years kind of getting the education behind them, spending a long, hard time on the grass learning. And
Sure.
Once they've got given that first opportunity, obviously you do what you can with it because you don't know when the next one might arise. And I think what she's doing at Man United is unbelievable.
Well, if the job comes up, put me down as a reference. Okay. It won't count for, but you know, just as a back burner for you. And the last one. What's your favourite? I've started doing cuisine for some reason. I don't know. It all started, I think, with Danish pastry with Thomas for the throwing guy. What's your favourite food?
Oh, it's going to be really weird. I'm such a fussy eater. Jacket potato, beans and cheese.
I'll tell you what. I did that 3 days ago when it was raining. I said, I'm doing a jacket tater and beans on it. My first choice was beans on toast, but I did that. So, no, I'm all over that. That's all right. You've got protein, you've got carbs and everything going. All right. It's been an absolute pleasure, Shauna. And I wish you all the very, very best for the future. Don't be a stranger. And would you like to leave all our viewers and supporters with a message out there under the current climate? And thank you.
Yeah, no, definitely. Obviously, thank you for having me on. And I think for any young coaches watching this, spend this time now doing as much as you can, whether it's podcasts, webinars, online courses. Just do what you can, because pretty much before we know it, we're going to be back working. And obviously, save the time that you've got now, and obviously stay safe and stay at home.